Welcome to the Honest Mamas podcast, where we talk about the emotional and spiritual aspects of the motherhood journey. We are a team of honest mamas. Myself, Melissa, Sophie, and Claire. We are psychotherapists, moms, and friends. Join us as we get real about the topics that matter to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 32 of the Honest Mamas podcast. This is Claire. Today, we get to hear the moving and at times heartbreaking story of Kelsey Vander Vliet and the adoption of the son she gave birth to in 2015. Kelsey's bravery and candor are incredible. I'm really grateful she was open to sharing her story with us. Kelsey was so impacted by the experience of being a birth mom, also commonly referred to as a first mom these days, that she went on to found an online resource for birth moms called From Another Mother. It's a place where birth moms can connect and support one another. It's quickly becoming a national resource for birth moms. As Kelsey says on her website, for many years, birth moms have been silenced or hidden away, but not anymore. There is a movement in the adoption community toward greater understanding and inclusion. Birth moms are fighting the stigma that has been attached to adoption and empowering themselves. I got connected to Kelsey through Laura Bruder, the executive director of another awesome organization called Brave Love, which is home to a pro-adoption movement dedicated to changing the perception of adoption by acknowledging birth moms for their brave decision. I was so moved by Kelsey's story and her willingness to share such an intimate experience with our listeners. She is a strong and loving woman who was faced with one of the most difficult decisions we ever have to make as women. Here is Kelsey's story. Hi, Kelsey. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So today we're talking about the experience of being a birth mom or first mom. Which of those names do you prefer?
I guess people refer to me in different ways. Some people prefer first mom. I don't really have a preference. I usually refer to myself as a birth mom, though.
Okay. Got it. So, yeah, we just wanted to take this chance to talk about what it's like to be a birth mom and particularly to hear your story and get to know a little bit about what your experience has been like. Would you mind kind of just starting at the beginning, whatever that is for you, and kind of hopping on in there and telling us?
Sure. Well, I graduated college in 2015, and then I moved home back to northern Indiana. And about 3 months after I had moved home, I had started seeing a guy that was my friend, and kind of just dated through the summer. And at the end of the summer, I found out I was pregnant. And so I told him I was pregnant, and he was not on board. He kind of told me that he had just started seeing somebody else, and it just wasn't convenient. And so our only option was then to get an abortion. And so we went to Planned Parenthood to get an abortion, and it didn't work. It was surgical, and they just woke me up afterwards and said it didn't work.
Wow.
So I kind of was left with a choice of what, do I come back or do I proceed with the pregnancy? So that day I just decided to proceed with the pregnancy.
Wow. Kelsey, sorry to interrupt. Can I just back up with you a little bit and just find out a little bit more about, first of all, I guess, how you felt when you learned that you were pregnant? I imagine it sounds like it probably wasn't something you were expecting.
No, I was terrified.
Yeah.
It just was not good timing. It rarely is, but it just was. I guess I had all these hopes, when you graduate college, you want to start your career, and I had a music degree, so I couldn't really use my degree in northern Indiana. I was planning to move elsewhere and kind of just start this big dream, and it just wasn't going to happen for me.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And then being left alone to handle a pregnancy is a whole nother layer of frightening.
Yeah, definitely.
So, it was just really discouraging. And on top of that, pregnancy just messes with your mind, as we know, hormones and everything else. You feel crazy about 99% of the time. So
right.
All of that compounded is really, it's difficult to work through. So yeah, I was terrified, and I hadn't told my parents. I maybe told one or two friends. I was embarrassed and ashamed. And a lot of that is just because, when you're not married or you don't even have a stable relationship, society looks at you like you did this to yourself.
Yeah, there's not a lot of compassion in some communities around that at all, which is really, really painful for women, and sounds like it's really painful for you. So sorry to hear that.
Definitely. So, but then once I decided to kind of continue my pregnancy, I had spoken with one of my best friend's mothers who got pregnant with my friend at 21. And she kind of told me how it was for her and how it's very hard, but how it was very worth it. And I listened to her, and I was skeptical, of course, but I kind of also felt like I didn't have any other choices because the abortion it was kind of traumatic for me, the whole process. And so I really just wanted to not go back, and I wanted to move forward.
Can I ask, without going too deep into it, as deep as you're comfortable, but it sounds like that you attempted to have the abortion, but that your body wouldn't allow it to happen, or what? How did the doctor? I haven't really heard of that before. How did the doctors explain that to you?
They explained that my cervix was hardened and that they just could not get through. And I'm not sure. I've never gotten answers on that. I've asked so many OBGYN doctors, and they don't know. Nobody knows.
Wow. That's so interesting.
So for me, it's my little miracle that I think of. So yeah, I don't really know how that happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't either, but it sounds like I know from experience and from my work that the mind-body connection is just so powerful. And, it just makes me wonder if there was a part of you or that just knew that this wasn't maybe the right choice for you.
Oh, definitely. Actually, before I had the procedure, I leading up to it in the days before, I never, I knew it's not what I truly wanted to do. And I knew I was being pressured, but I didn't let that show on the outside. And then as soon as I changed into that gown and sat on that table, and I was alone by myself in the room for about 5 minutes, I kind of broke down because this was it. This was that moment. And I didn't feel like there was anything that I could really do to change it. I felt like I was too deep into it to walk out.
Yeah, I can completely understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, having a baby is one of those things that, we're so alone in doing it in the sense that it's in our body, right? It's our body and it's ourselves and our whole being, but it also involves other people, right? It involves the dad or the man, who helped make the baby, and it involves like family members and community members. And so I can imagine it being really difficult to kind of, wade through all of those different opinions and different pressures just to find your own truth and your own voice.
Everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
So then I had thought about adoption, and I, considered it, and it just never really seemed realistic, I guess. It seems really impossible when you're, 6-7 weeks pregnant. You don't, especially for first time mothers, you don't realize that there's a real life inside of you up until the time that you give birth sometimes.
Yeah, I can totally resonate with that. Yeah.
Yes, it's so hard to fathom that there is a actual person inside of you. So I just, I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought, this is what I'm going to do, but maybe not, because it doesn't seem real. And when I told my mom I was pregnant, I also told her this is my plan. I'm going to place my child for adoption. And she was very much on board. And I remember her exact words were, "I'm not mad at you. I'm just very heartbroken for you." And because she could see how distressed I was. It was a very emotional time.
Yeah.
So, but she was like my rock through my pregnancy. And from that moment I told her, she helped me find a doctor. She helped me, with process emotions and find an agency that would help me, and just was very honest with me and open with me and said, this is going to be hard, but you can do it. If this is what you want to do, then you can do it. And so
I'm so glad you had her support.
There's
really
so many
loving.
Don't, or they have someone that's against them their whole 9 months. And I had people against me too, but I was living with my mom, and she was the best thing I could have had during that time.
I'm so glad. Wow.
So, and about, I guess, a few months after that, I ended up picking a family. They give you like a stack of bios to look through of parents that are home study ready. They've gone through background checks, and they've gone through adoption education classes.
Mm-hmm. Is that what it means to be home study ready, or?
Home study ready is they actually have someone come to their home, like a social worker or whoever's qualified to do those. And they look through your house. They make sure, it's fit to have a child live there,
right?
That it's a big enough space, etc. So all the families they give you, they've gone through their own vetting process.
I see.
So I picked out two profiles that I really liked, and I interviewed both of them over the phone. And I remember the attorney telling me, people usually don't interview more than one. And I was like, well, this is a big decision.
Yeah, good for you.
So I felt like that was necessary, and I ended up going with, one family, of course. And
can I ask, when you were, choosing the two families to interview, like, how did you do that? Like, how did you know this family or that family felt right? Or what did you notice?
It's such a weird process. The whole thing is just odd.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I remember dragging my feet over looking through profiles, and I didn't want to do it. It was just kind of, I wanted to put it off as much as possible.
Yeah.
My mom was like, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through these at the table. Mm-hmm. And so we sat down together, and we would look at the profile, and we were kind of dramatic with it, which is it seems brash now looking back, but we kind of made fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of how we function and how we cope.
Yeah,
and
totally.
So if we didn't like something about this family, we would say, nope, and throw it across the dining room.
Right.
And so
that makes sense to me.
Because we were like, this is a sad situation. This is a hard situation, and we're going to try to make it better. And so we kind of just went through one by one, and we found two that we really liked. Now, my dad was the influence of the second one, because they weren't really in my top pile, but he liked them. So I was like, I'll give it a chance. You never know. Mm-hmm. So then when I interviewed them, the first interview I did was with the family that I ultimately picked. And it's so awkward.
Oh,
no, they kind of just let me loose and were like, okay, call this family will call you, and you're going to have to just talk to them. And we talked for maybe a half hour, but it was just very awkward all the way through. We didn't really know what to ask each other. Mm-hmm. No one had ever done this before. And, how do you interview people that are going to raise your child?
Oh, yeah.
And so I just kind of hung up the phone feeling really discouraged. And then I called the next family.
So was the first family the one that you had originally picked, and the second one the family that your dad liked, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And so the second family I called, and they were really sweet. I really liked them a lot. The conversation went smoother, and they had adopted before, so I could tell that this wasn't new to them. Oh. So they were really sweet, but then just kind of our desires for education didn't line up. They were planning on homeschooling, and that just wasn't familiar to me, and that's not really what I envisioned.
Right.
And so I just kind of hung up the phone on that one, feeling like, well, I don't know, because these two families, they're both really sweet, but I just didn't feel a connection. And then maybe a week later, the first family, the mom, she called me and just was on her way home and called me from her cell phone just to say, I know that didn't go well. I could sense it. I want another chance. Aww. I just talk to you. And I kind of felt like that was something like a go-getter would do. And I'm very much a go-getter. And so I kind of resonated with that. And so,
well, and very vulnerable for her to reach out again and kind of, name what had happened that didn't feel good and take care of you in that, in a way.
Yes. And so after that call, I was completely sold. And the attorney actually called me the next day and said the other family, that the second family that my dad liked, they had been picked by someone else. So it was kind of like, well, that took care of it for me.
It worked out.
Yeah.
That way.
So it definitely worked out. I got to know them over the next couple of months. They would drive up once a month and have dinner with me or lunch with me and kind of just get to know me. They would text me and call me every once in a while. And they sent me some things that, they thought I would like. And not at all. If you're an outsider from adoption, you would think, oh, are they bribing or something? And no, not at all. It's not that way. Mm-hmm. Just things like, hey, I was thinking of you, as something small and inexpensive, just to say, we care about you. Yeah. We want you to know that.
They valued you.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I felt that in a genuine way. Mm-hmm. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. And so towards the end of my pregnancy, you pick out you figure out your hospital plan. Mm-hmm. So you get to decide if you want them with you in the room or if you want them to come later or come after the signing. And I just decided that this is the only time that I get to spend time with my baby, and I want time by myself. So I actually had them come after the signing, which was 24 hours pretty much after I had him. Wow. And so they just, they were totally comfortable with that. And that was something else too, because not every parent is comfortable with that. They would think, oh my gosh, is she going to change her mind? And I knew it was the decision for me and my child. And so I just needed them to trust me that that's how it was going to happen.
Yeah. To respect your need and to respect your boundaries and to respect the relationship that you had built with the baby over the time that you'd been together.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. How were you doing? And maybe this is, a hard question to answer or hard to share, but how were you doing emotionally during the time as the baby was growing? How did you feel? I had a really rough pregnancy. Not great. To be honest, I just remember being very just kind of, you want your pregnancy to be over after a certain point because the third trimester, your back is hurting, everything is just harder to do. And you're just kind of sick of it a lot of times. So I was to that point and I was very much, and I never once enjoyed my pregnancy. There's not a single picture of me pregnant, which is just all part of the shame of it. And so I was kind of humiliated. I had gotten fired from my job during my second trimester, I think, or first, because I was pregnant and I was too sick. I was a waitress and the food smell would make me throw up. And so I wasn't allowed to throw up in the bathroom. They made me run out into the back alley. Oh my gosh. Is that even legal?
No, it's not. It's definitely not legal. No.
Oh my gosh. That's awful.
It was awful. And so I went without a job for about a month and I just ended up substitute teaching at a local school, a local high school. And I was teaching senior English. And the seniors were 5 years younger than me. So not much younger. Some of them
my goodness, wow.
knew my little brother. And I'm pregnant and they know. And it's humiliating. And I even had a student who was pregnant at the same time as me. And she was keeping her baby. And it's just different. It's everybody has different paths they take. But it was really hard to be in front of a young audience like that while I'm going through the darkest times of my life.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That sounds really, really tough.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't, so there were emotional struggles and challenges, not to mention, for some women, as you said, like pregnancy just doesn't feel good. I think some women experience it physically differently, and it's more pleasant for them. And for some of it wasn't very pleasant for me. So I can resonate with that.
And it starts with trauma, I think.
Right. Right. There's that too.
I hope to one day have a pregnancy that I very much enjoy. And I think even if it had physical struggles, my emotional state will be different.
Yes. That makes sense. Yeah. So once you got to the 9 months and you made the birth plan, then it was time to give birth.
Mm-hmm. I went in to be induced, and I actually just started labor on my own that morning. And I felt it's terrifying giving birth for the first time. Yes. I think my mom was in the room with me. And so my mom and I would go get up every hour and go do laps around the hospital and come back and sit down. And so, it was just an anticipation, and it was just you still don't think it's going to happen. It's it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if it will.
Right.
And then in the middle of the night, my water broke, and I looked over at my parents, and both of them were sleeping on that little tiny couch in the room.
Oh.
And they were exhausted, but they were there and they were present. And that meant so much to me. I remember thinking how grateful I was to have my team right in the room with me.
Oh, yeah.
And, but once my water broke, my dad's like, I can't watch this. I have to go. It's going to kill me if I sit here and see you in pain. And so my mom, stood by me, and the nurses came in, and they were like, okay, well, you're dilated, so it's time to push. And I looked at my mom. I said, wait a second. What?
Oh.
It just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I told her, I remember telling her, I have not even come to terms with the fact that I'm pregnant yet. So I don't think I can do this. And she was like, honey, yes, you can. And it's going to be okay.
Oh.
So I only ended up pushing for about 35 minutes.
Wow.
And I was just, it is the hardest thing I've ever done. And it is, I don't know. I think it's so weird how once that baby is born, once that baby's out and, they hold him in front of you, it's like the biggest rush of emotion and love. And I can see why women go back and do it again.
Yes.
That was just the best and hardest moment when he got to lay skin to skin on me. And I just remember just the flood of emotions and how much I couldn't believe that there was actually a baby inside.
Yeah.
This little boy was just, he was so perfect in every way. I couldn't. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. It's an incredible moment. And I would imagine even more so given all the complexities that you'd been through and all the struggle, and just to have that moment of completion and togetherness in a real different way.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's moving. Yeah. So you got to be with him in those moments. And did you end up being with him then for the 24 hours? Is that what you did end up needing and wanting?
Yes. So I spent the whole day with him and night. And I had a couple of my best friends, they came to visit. And then my grandparents, both sets of my grandparents actually came to visit. And being able to see them hold this baby that they won't hold again is it rips your heart out and then puts it back together all at once. So
wow. Yeah.
My parents were they loved it. They loved that time.
Yeah. Sacred time.
I know that was so comforting for them and my brother was able to come and see him. And then the signing was the next morning. So the attorney came and read the paperwork to me and then I signed, and that was one of the worst moments, I think.
Yeah.
I remember looking over and seeing my mom rocking him while I'm signing my rights away. And it rips your heart out. It totally does. About an hour after the signing, the adoptive parents came up and got to see him for the first time and hold him and talk to me and see how I'm feeling. And I remember I hadn't slept in like 3 days. And so I was
You were exhausted.
So tired. And so I told them, you can take him for 2 hours while I nap, but only 2 hours because I really want him back for the rest of the time that I have him. And they said, absolutely, no problem. Mm-hmm. They took him into another room and got to spend some time. And then they brought him back. I mean, I woke up and they were back. And I spent another day and another night with him. Mm-hmm. And then the next morning was when we all got discharged from the hospital and it was time to go home. Mm. And that was just, the nights that I spent with him were awesome, but they were a real kind of reality check for me. I think that to know that it would be so difficult to take him home and then take care of him by myself and have to get up by myself and take care of him. Yeah. I expected my parents to help me, and this was my situation and my son, and it was really kind of like, I could do this, but what kind of life is this right now? And so I just wasn't stable. I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything to really give him. And I kind of felt like this was a confirmation, and I knew that. And so the next morning when we all got discharged, that was really rough. I think there's a lot of just the memory of it is really tough. Plus, of me walking out of the hospital empty-handed. They walk out with a baby and I don't. But I think the best adoptive parents are conscious of that. They later told me that when they went into the elevator with him in the baby seat, they put him down and they just bawled. Oh. And because they felt like they were stealing a baby, And that's how it felt for me too, but it wasn't that way. And I remember just going home from the hospital and sitting there like, now what do I do? I'm not pregnant anymore. I don't have anything. And it took me a while to get back on my feet.
I can imagine.
Morning I would wake up and just cry, and my mom would come in my room and just lay with me and until I stopped and help me plan out my day and see what we could do today to make it better, And so it's tough. It's not an easy thing. The first couple of weeks, go by and you're
grieving,
your day.
Yeah.
Eventually I went back to work and I got a new job and I had good friends and a good family to help me through, but there were still those really dark times. And so I didn't really have any support from the place that I played through. They, you get living expenses money. And so they sent me my last check in the mail and that was it. And I never really heard from them again.
They don't do any other types of support.
No.
Oh.
So they didn't at the time. I don't know now, but
okay.
I kind of just didn't hear anything and that was it.
Did you what was the setup with the adoptive family? Like, what was the plan?
Every single day.
Really?
They would text me pictures of him. I remember I got a picture as soon as they got home. And then the next morning of his first bath and like every milestone, I got videos of him. And then about 5 weeks he was 5 weeks old. I was going down to where they lived. They lived about 2.5 hours away from me. And so I was driving down for a concert and they said, oh, that's right by our house. Why don't you just stop by before you go?
Oh.
And I was like, well, okay. So I did. And that was my very first visit. It was like spontaneous. And I just was there for an hour or two and I just held him and, it was just like we reunited on that day. And it was an awesome first visit because I just went right to the concert and had fun with my friends. And then that was it. And so, but yeah, they kept in contact with me. They would call me, see how I was doing, make sure to plan the next visit. I had about 5 visits in the first year, 4 or 5, I think. But during that winter after, I had him in May of 2016. So the next winter was really rough, just real deep seasonal depression. Kind of just felt like there was nowhere to turn. In the fall, I had started going, I found out about a support group in my area. And so I started attending that every time I would go. And it was really refreshing. And it was just a place where I could talk to other women who had done the same thing as me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I finally had someone who understood and wasn't just there to listen, but was there to offer real concrete advice that from their own experience. And that was refreshing to have. That was, invaluable.
Yeah. What a relief to get that, to be witnessed by people who've been there and to hear what's helped them and have somebody who really understands. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So do you still visit him?
I do. So my last visit was December. We did a Christmas kind of visit. We all exchanged gifts, and then my parents and my little brother were actually able to come too.
Aww.
We just all went out for brunch, and we got to spend a couple of hours together. And my parents really love his family too, and so it's not a weird visit. It's just kind of, it just feels like an extended family.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like it really was a lovely choice that you made. It sounds like they're deeply caring people.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sure it must be reassuring on many levels.
Oh, yeah. I picked them because I felt like, especially when I met them, I felt like they were kind of an older version of me. They're about, I think they're like 37 and I just turned 25. So yeah, they're about 12 years older than me. And I just felt like we have the same personalities. They're just at a different stage of life. And so it felt familiar to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, I'm so glad. That just is good to hear. So I know that you've, gone on from this experience to do some other things in your life. Do you want to share what you've created from this experience? What else you've created?
Yeah. So when I was going through like that really bad depression, I just was like, I need to get out of this and I don't know how, but I'm just going to try everything and see what works. And so I tried writing and it helped me, but it was just like, I wanted more people that understood. And from the stories I had heard in support group, I knew that they needed the same thing. And so I bought like a website domain and I didn't really take it public or anything. I just kind of whittled away at it for a while. And then in February of 2017, I decided to go public with it. And it really kind of took off in a couple months' time. I went to a conference in Orlando and spoke on this panel of birth moms, and we all shared our stories, and I made friends with all those girls and actually met the girl that's my best friend now. Alice, and she's a birth mom, and we placed just a couple, like maybe 6 months from each other. So I really found a good community. And then we kind of just helped each other along, and by me making friends with girls in other states, when they share my blogs, it goes to people in their circle, and then it's kind of gone like nationwide from there. And
so it extends the reach of the support.
Yes.
And what is the website called?
It's called From Another Mother.
Oh, that's so cute.
I kind of just blog about what I'm going through in real time. I've blogged about everything from like our grief cycles to just having those downtimes, or to what we can do to make our day go better, or Mother's Day or the holidays. Just kind of whatever I'm feeling in that moment, I kind of just write it down. And I've really heard good things about how it's helped people, and adoptive moms will give the link to their child's birth mom. And then another thing I like to do is have representatives in different states. So right now we've got a Texas representative, Montana, a separate Indiana representative from myself, and then in Illinois. And we just added someone for New England. So
cool.
Really cool. And how that works is women email me all the time off of the contact form on the site, and just that they've not had support. They would like to know of any support groups in their area, or just someone who's like them from where they're from. And so I connect them with their representative. And
that is so cool.
Or someone that can help them get post-placement support because they didn't.
Wow. That is such a great service that you kind of stumbled upon, to create for people. Yeah. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it also feeds you, because then you get to also receive support and make connections, and it's just lovely. So
some of my best friends now are birth moms. And it's just because, and it's not because my friends before weren't great, but it's just because they get me in a way that nobody else does.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Well, is there anything you would want to say to other birth moms out there, or anything you want to say to like the general public, just about anything you want to share? Well,
I think there's just a big stigma over birth moms, of this perception that we, obviously there's something in our life that we don't have together if we are placing, but we're not giving our child up. We're not putting our child up. We're placing because it's with purpose. We're doing it for the betterment of our child's life.
Yeah, out of love.
Yeah, it's out of love, and it's the highest love, because it's hard to do. Yeah. It is the most difficult thing I've ever done. And it follows me. It's something that it's a forever choice.
Yeah.
I think people always think that birth moms are drug addicts, or they're mentally ill or irresponsible. And while a lot of us do struggle with some of these different things, it doesn't make up who we are as people. It doesn't, define our personhood. And I think every one of us is human, and every person on earth is one step away from making a life-altering choice, just like we did. And we're no different. And
absolutely.
I just think, we made the choice that was best for us in that moment. And I wish that people would just kind of value us more, and we're not less than.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, well, I hear you, and I support you, and I'm grateful to you for the brave sharing that you've done, not only here, but in your life with your community, and having extended your voice and your support to all these other women who are, doing something, as you said, that's a forever choice that will be with you for the rest of your lives, and the rest of the lives of your child, and the people who were fortunate enough to be with him.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kelsey, we'll provide the information for your website in our show notes, and that way people can find you and contact you, and maybe sooner rather than later, you'll have representatives from every state in the nation, and maybe someday from other nations. So I just want to wish you the very best on your journey, and really applaud your honesty and your bravery and your love. So
thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. Being able to have children is a privilege and an enormous responsibility. Kelsey exemplifies what it is to be a good mom. She embodies living from the heart, and I wish her the very best as she continues her life journey. The changes taking place in the birth first mom community reflect the greater awareness emerging in the adoption arena in general, and the strength of the women involved. If you are interested in Kelsey's advocacy work and want to connect with other birth moms, please visit her website at www.FromAnotherMother.com. Another great resource for adoption advocacy and birth mom support is Brave Love. You can find them on the web at www.bravelove.com. Both of these resources will be listed on our website in this episode's show notes. To get the show notes, sign up for our e-course, or get more information, go to www.honestmamas.com/episode 32. Also, join our community on Facebook by going to www.facebook.com/Honest Mamas Community, where these conversations will continue.